Right, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you very much for attending this CATHEXIS knowledge session. Today, we're going to be covering the CATHEXIS response to the COVID-19 virus. And we've been developing product which will hopefully assist our customers and our partners to help them to prevent the spread of the disease. And they've had to take actions, and we are trying to assist them with those actions that they are taking. So today my name is Gus Brecker. I am the Global Business Development Manager for CATHEXIS Technologies. And I'm going to be joined by our co-host, Mr. Sami Yunus, who's the Technical Manager at CATHEXIS Middle East, and Mr. Mark Ross, who's the Managing Director of CATHEXIS Europe. So we'll be presenting the webinar with all the delegates in listen-only mode today. So you'll be muted for the duration of the webinar. The webinar is probably going to be about 20 minutes. And after the 20 minutes, we'll be answering questions. Mark and Sami will be answering all your questions. So before we go into the COVID measures that we've taken, just a quick introduction to CATHEXIS for those of you who don't really know us that well. So we're one of the world leaders in video management solutions, 25 years experience in the marketplace, and we sell in about 53 different countries. And for those of you who were on our welcome screen, you would have noticed there was a banner there which announced that we won the Benchmark Innovation Awards for 2020. That was announced last week. And it's something that we're very proud of, because that was an award by an independent body for video management solutions innovation. And we were up against some of the top video management solutions in the world. If you want any more information on CATHEXIS or our products, please feel free to go to our website, www.cathexisvideo.com. Right, so just a little bit about this webinar. Obviously, as I mentioned, we have put quite a lot of effort into developing products or solutions that will assist our partners in their quest to prevent the spread of the COVID disease. So I'm going to give you a little overview of each item, each product, and a little demo or a video of the product working. And then, quite importantly, I'm going to go into the configuration. Now, the configuration is a little bit technical, but I think it's very important to show you what we've done, to give you an indication of the effort that we put in, and also the features that are available and the capability of that particular feature. And then we're going to be going into a Q&A session. Right, so today we're going to be covering social distancing, face mask detection, and temperature screening. So the first thing I'm going to look at is social distancing. So what is our objective here? So what we've got to do in order for social distancing to work, we have to detect that there are people in the camera view. And for that, we use our artificial intelligence or our object classification to detect that these objects that are wandering around in the camera view are in fact people. Once we've detected that there are people, we now have to analyze when these people are within a certain distance from each other and how long they've been a certain distance from each other. Then we can notify a user or trigger an alarm or do something to indicate that this event has occurred, store that alarm in an associated database, and then enable the users to retrieve that information, the different alarms, and view the associated video footage. So I'm just going to show you a quick video of the algorithm functioning in a very simple environment. I think the video speaks for itself, so I don't really need to talk you through it. And as I mentioned, we are using object classification. So if those were not people, if it was cars or any other objects, it would not be triggering those events and it would not be detecting that event. Okay, so that's just a simple video. I'm now going to show you some of the configuration so you can see how to set the system up. And it's fairly straightforward in our social distancing algorithm. First of all, there's your minimum distance. So how far apart are the people? You might only want to trigger if the people are 1 meter apart or 2 meter apart. Then we've introduced what we call persistence. Now, persistence means that you can set the time that the people need to be within that minimum distance before we trigger. In other words, you don't want somebody who's just walking past somebody else to trigger an event. Only you want to trigger if the people are together for a period of time. And then we've got our confidence level that our object classification uses to detect that objects are in fact people. And that's really, you set up according to the camera view and the camera perspective and the lighting, etc. There's quite a few different parameters that you need to be aware of when you set that up. And feel free to ask any questions in the chat while we're going through this. If you've got any questions on the social distancing or any other item as well. And then we have the database. So we've identified that there are people within the minimum distance for a period of time. We want to write that into a database. We want to create an event and then enable users to go and find that information. So this is our database view. We can now mine the database by setting up time. So I'm going to say in the week to date, you can choose a particular period, you can choose a day, you can choose the last hour. So it's got ultimate flexibility. And then I've said I want to look at Pinehurst Primary School proximity alarm, and then you can find the events. So those are all the events on the left-hand side from the Pinehurst Primary School. And once you've identified the event, you can then click on it and you can play back that video, export it for emailing or sending to an alarm management system, however you wish. So that pretty much covers the social distancing aspect. As I mentioned, any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat or in the quick Q&A session. I'm now going to go into face mask detection or no face mask detection, however you want to view it. And I think this is probably the most used disease spread prevention method. We've got whole organizations, we've got whole countries that have legislated that people must wear masks. And it's quite an effort for all the organizations to try and enforce this. And we are hoping that our algorithm will assist them in identifying people who are not wearing masks and allow them to take action to try and overcome that problem. So again, what do we want to do? So the way we work with our face mask detection is we first detect faces. So we use a double algorithm here. We use our object classification to detect faces. Then we use another algorithm to detect whether that face has a mask. So we've got a double algorithm running here using our analytics. Again, we can trigger an event. We can take actions when a mask is not being worn. And we can store that alarm in the database and allow you to retrieve video footage associated with that particular event. So I'm going to show you firstly a quick video clip of one of our engineers just doing some testing on the masks. You'll notice that he's trying different masks just to check the algorithm. You'll also notice that he's got a beard and a mustache, which makes the algorithm a little bit more difficult. And then he'll try and fool the algorithm by using his hands, and you can see the algorithm is quite resistant to being fooled. And then also the position of the head to ensure that the algorithm functions under various different conditions. So what we're going to look at now is the configuration. And again, you'll see the effort that we've put in here to try and ensure that this is the most effective algorithm possible and that we're minimizing false alerts. So first of all, you can choose a detection area. So you might have a camera looking at a door of a retail store or something like that. And you don't really necessarily want to start doing analytics on all the people that are walking past the camera. You only want to do analysis on the people who are walking into the store. So you can choose the area in which you perform the algorithm. Then we need to set up our face detection sensitivity. As I mentioned, there's a double algorithm. We first detect the face. And once we've got the face, we then apply the mask detection algorithm to that face detection. So we set the face detection sensitivity, and then we set the mask detection sensitivity. And again, this is camera dependent, depends on the camera view, etc. We've then got a couple of different mask detection methods. When we first started the algorithm, we were triggering on an immediate transaction when there was no mask. We then realized that if people are looking away and then back towards the camera, we were getting some false alerts. So we've introduced a smart learning algorithm as well. So our default is the smart algorithm, and we have found that that is the most reliable when it comes to detecting that there's no mask and minimizing false alerts. You can also set the minimum face size. Excuse me. So you might only want to apply the algorithm if a face, the mask algorithm, if a face is a certain size. And again, this is in order to try and minimize erroneous face detections that we're applying to the algorithm. And then another really interesting algorithm that the guys applied here is that if you've got a lot of small faces in the view, we've got the ability to expand the face size. So once we've detected a face, we then expand the face size by applying a little bit of area around the face, expanding the size of that, and only then applying it to the mask detection algorithm. And that really dramatically improves the mask detection or the no mask detection algorithm. And once again, we've got overlays. So here we can say, I want to show an overlay of the face detection. So you can see the green rectangle is the face detection overlay. The red oval is the mask detection overlay. And then of course, we've got the ability to put text on there as well. And you can change the size of the text. Those overlays will be on the live view and the recorded view. So here's a little video of the mask detection working in a more real world scenario. Now you can see if you look here that the guy on the left is looking away and it's still detecting nicely. The guy on the right is pulling down his mask and you can see the mask detection algorithm working. And it can work in a fairly crowded environment as well, quite successfully. So I think the guys have done a good job on this, on this algorithm in making it reliable for the marketplace. Once again, looking at our database view is very similar. You can see on the screen the blue square on the image view, and that is the area in which we are doing the mask detection. We can set the time range. So I've said in the week to date, I want to look at all triggers where no face mask has been worn. And once you've found the events in the database, you can then play that back from the database view, export it, play it backwards and forwards, zoom in, zoom out, do whatever you want, manipulate it. Right, so that is our mask detection algorithm. Once again, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and my clever co-hosts will attempt to answer them. Right, now into temperature monitoring. And this is probably the area where we've put in the most effort with regards to trying to ensure that the temperature readings are accurate, and that we have done our utmost to give you the best possible solution. So once again, what we need to do, we interface with thermal cameras. We don't have our own thermal camera. We interface with thermal cameras and we receive thermal data from the camera. We then, via a visible light camera, detect faces. So a lot of the thermal cameras have got dual cameras on board. They've got a visible light camera and they've got a thermal camera. So what we do is we detect faces using our object classification, our own AI, and we detect facial landmarks even within that face, so that we only get temperature readings from that particular area, rather than getting erroneous readings from coffee or somebody's lunch that they've just heated up. We can then configure overlays and alarms for temperatures that are over or under a selected threshold, store that alarm in the database, and then allow you to retrieve the footage. So just a quick video that I'll probably play twice for you today, just to show you analytics working. This is running with a robotics camera with a dual lens. And as I said, we detect the face using the visible light camera, and we receive the temperatures from the robotics camera using their temperature measurement on board. Then allow mining of the database. So this is now playing back that same footage from the database. You'll notice the overlays are also played back from that database. Right, now I'm going to go into configuration, and I'm just going to ask you to bear with me a little bit here. It's going to get quite complex, quite technical, but I think it is important for me to show you this so you can really get a feel for the capabilities of the solution that we've provided. First of all, we can set up multiple camera views. Now, I'm applying this to the robotics camera, and I'll talk about the different cameras a little bit later. But first of all, we can set up the view. So for instance, if you've got a dual lens camera, you might want to look at the visible light camera with a little thumbnail of the thermal camera on the top right or the top left. You can change the size of that to whatever you want. We can do it the opposite way around. And then we can merge those two together. We can also change the overlay and the opacity of the various views, and also set the min and maximum temperatures so we can change the color rendering of the camera itself. So we've gone into a very deep integration with this particular product. I now need to talk about parallax error compensation. So just a quick overview on parallax error. If you've got two cameras, and like I said, if we've got our left-hand camera doing visible light camera detection for face detection, and in the right-hand camera looking at thermal data, we need to make sure that the camera views have no parallax error. So in other words, if you're looking at position 1 and 2 on those cameras, you'll see on the right-hand side of the slide where those items are positioned with each camera, and you can see they're slightly offset. To illustrate this a bit better, here's an overlay of the cameras that are overlaid on top of one another. You can see on the left-hand side, the visible light camera is offset to the left of the thermal camera. On the right-hand side, the visible camera is offset to the right. And in the middle, once we've done our adjustments, they are completely in sync with one another. And this is just how we set it up. This is a snapshot from our setup menu. So the idea is that what you want is where you do the temperature reading, at the point at which you do the temperature reading, that these two cameras are perfectly aligned so that our face detection and the feedback we get from the camera from that face area is correct. Another effort we put in is in the black body regulator. So a black body regulator, for those who don't know, is really a temperature reference. So what we do is we get the temperature from the black body regulator, okay, and then we can compensate for any errors that are coming from the camera. So if the black body regulator says it's 37 degrees, and the camera that's pointing at that black body regulator says it's 38, then we will automatically compensate by that 1 degree when we present our reading and we do our analysis. Again, guys, this is a little bit deep, but I think it's important for you to know that we've got this capability. So please feel free to ask questions as we go along. Right, and then in the setup when we can trigger events, what we've done is we've created 3 different threshold areas. So you can see there's a blue area, a green area, and a red area. And we can set different temperatures there, and then you can trigger on any one of those areas. It also allows us to overlay different colors on the screen for live view and for recorded view at those different areas. Then a little bit deeper, we've introduced quite a few different temperature measurement methods. So we can measure on top temperatures, the top X% of temperatures tracked over time, the maximum temperatures averaged and tracked over time, or facial landmarks. So once again, we are using the CATHEXIS object classification and AI to identify a face, but not just a face. We can identify landmarks within a face. So if your application requires that somebody has to stop and take their glasses off and look at a camera, we can then look at their tear ducts, which is one of the most accurate places to identify temperatures. Or you can choose any landmarks on the face, and those are the points at which we're going to receive those temperatures. Again, minimizing false alerts from erroneous areas on the body, or coffee, or tea, or lunch, or whatever the guy's carrying. Right, then you've got our face detection settings. So within our face detection algorithm, we need to see how sensitive that is. And you can also set your minimum and maximum face size. So you might only want to do temperature measurements on a face that is a certain size. And again, that stops you measuring faces that are in the distance and stuff like that. So as you can see, it's pretty complex when it comes to the setup, but it does allow the ultimate flexibility for your particular application. Right, we can also enable database recording. So do you want to enable all these items to be recorded to the database? You can set up email notifications. And you can see, as I mentioned before, we had 3 different thresholds that you could set up, the red, green, and blue. And you can decide whether you want to email somebody automatically on one of those events. And then your on-screen overlays, which is really what you're seeing on the screen when an event occurs. So you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, we show an overlay of all temperatures detected. And you can set up the size of the overlay, the size of the text, how many of those images you want. And then you've got your temperature overlays, which is showing you the face detection, which is that green oval, and then the temperature, which is the text. Okay. Then once again, as per our previous items, we can enable you to mine the database. So the database is a very similar view. It enables you to look, and I've just said I'm looking for temperatures over 38 degrees on a particular camera in the week to date. Once you've found a transaction, you can then play that video back. The camera view there will mirror what you've set up before, whether you want the visible light camera with a thumbnail of the thermal, whether you want the thermal with a thumbnail of the live, or whether you want them merged. And you'll see on the top right the overlay. So I'm just going to replay that original video for you, now that you've seen the setup, just so you can get a feel for what you've done. You'll see the parallax error on this overlaid video as they come towards you. And you'll see that the cameras merge at the time when the reading is done. You'll see the overlays on the top right-hand side and the alert. And then you'll see the database mining as well. Okay, then we need to talk about what cameras we support. So all the setup you've seen is really done with what we call our advanced configuration. So with Mobotics, we've done really deep integration, and all that advanced configuration we can do with the Mobotics camera. We've also integrated the Duct camera, and for that we've got a limited configuration. We don't have the ability to set up a lot of those views, a lot of the settings, but we still have the ability to receive information from the camera, overlay it, store it in a database, etc. So feel free to ask questions or reach out to our guys for a bit more information on that. And then we are in progress with other cameras and integration thereof. So that pretty much covers our temperature monitoring. So just a quick little cartoon of what we've shown you today. So I think we've shown you a little bit about our social distancing, how it works, how far apart people can be. We've shown you persistence. We've shown you how we detect faces. We've shown you how we can trigger events on different temperatures, how we display the thumbnails on the live view, how we detect masks. And on top of this all, we've shown you how we can then mine the database to find any one of these transactions from any of these algorithms in order to do forensic analysis. Right, so that pretty much covers our webinar. So what I'm going to do now is going to ask Sammy and Mark to just unmute themselves and show their videos so that they can answer questions that have come in. and we'll be answering questions in the text and also live. If your question does not get answered today, guys, don't worry, we'll get back to you to ensure that, that you do get your questions answered.
Morning, everybody, and thanks very much for attending this webinar. Hope it's been informative.
Right, I see there are a lot of questions, Mark.
Yes, okay. So one of the questions that I saw coming in was regards the tear duct measurement. And Sammy, you can chip in with this as well, because I know you've done as much testing as we have. When we were first introduced to the concept of using the raw thermal data to measure temperatures on faces, and then particularly pointed out that we should be measuring areas like the tear ducts because they tend to be more representative of the faces, of the body temperature. We have done a lot of that and it's been quite successful, but it's got to be used in conjunction with a black body regulator if you want to get that level of accuracy. Typically, the tear duct is used in a more constrained environment where people are presenting themselves to the camera. They're standing on a spot, which is what we've coined the parallax spot. So it's where you've merged the thermal image and the visual image together. And if you're a meter either side of that, then the reading can be less accurate. So it's quite important that if you want to get down to tear duct level and specific facial landmark level, that the people are stopping in front of the camera, ideally on a specific spot where the camera's been calibrated to. And from then on, yes, you can absolutely use tear ducts quite successfully and numerous other facial landmarks. In a more robust environment where people are going to present quicker and move on or walk through, then you probably want to use the top 1% of the facial pixels, or just pick a max temperature. It's still very indicative, provided the camera's been calibrated, it's still very indicative of the core body temperature. Sammy, I don't know if you want to add anything to that?
No, you summarized it all, Mark.
Okay.
Just trying to answer some of the Q&A. Lucas, you asked about if we have any suggestion for the installation height of the camera and the black body. I think if we're talking about the Mobotex integration, they recommend that the camera height is between 1.8 to 2 meters. And the black body should be in the view of the thermal sensor.
Yeah, and I think quite important there that the black body has got to be in line with the person that's being measured as well. So you can't have the black body necessarily a meter or 2 meters behind the person. So the black body's got to be as close to where the person is being measured as possible, all because of this parallax condition within the cameras. There's a question from CATHEXIS about black bodies that have been tested. We've only tested the one up until now, CATHEXIS, and that is the one that Mobotex are providing into the marketplace. In theory, it doesn't really matter if you could get any hot device or any heat source device that you know precisely what the temperature is and you can keep it at that temperature, then that's fine. And that's why we've included the virtual black body into our configuration as well, because in theory, you could pick a point on a wall where you know that wall temperature is going to be 23 degrees consistently. Then it doesn't have to be an actual black body itself. There's no technical tie-in between the CATHEXIS software and the black body other than we look at it, we know that it should be 38 degrees, and then we tell whatever raw data that's coming in that it should be 38 degrees and then recalibrate accordingly. So you could use any black body is a short answer.
Another question, I think it's what is the minimum PC requirement for the software? We would recommend that you use a quad-core i7 at 3.4 gigahertz if you're going to run the mask algorithm and the thermal temperature detection. With 8 GB of RAM. And the next question, are your solution applicable on outdoors? The answer to that would be no. The solution should be installed in a fairly stable ambient temperature. So outdoors, the thermal solution will not work.
Okay, so you're referring in particular to the thermal there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the thermal application, it's imperative that the ambient temperature is as consistent as possible. If your ambient temperature moves around a lot, then that will play havoc with the thermal camera itself. Bear in mind, we are just the recipient of the readings that the thermal camera generates. We only recalibrate or manipulate those numbers if we've got a black body in place. But other than that, we are literally presenting the data that the thermal camera is giving us. And that's why it's important that you do use a good quality thermal camera, and particularly one that can present the raw thermal data. There is a question in from Williams about, are there special cameras required for social distancing and mass detection? No, you could use that on any good quality IP camera that you've got. You just obviously need clear view, you know, good sharp image, and it'll work fine.
Okay, I see there's a question just come in asking about whether it can be used next to the main entrance indoors.
The background temperature of the person who's entering the premises should be also fairly stable. So if you put it looking at the entrance, then you might get wrong readings. So it should not look at a very variable temperature glass door or something like that.
Yeah, and I think parallel with that, Raina has asked, you know, the skin, body skin temperature is affected by outdoor temperature. And that logic would prevail there, that if somebody has walked in from a very hot day outdoors or even a cold day, that's going to impact their skin temperature. So a lot of these installations have been put well into the reception area, so there is a degree of calming down or equalization within the room temperature, and then their true body temperature will be measured. So it's not an exact science, as I'm sure everybody appreciates, and a lot of common sense does have to prevail when you set up the installation. So indoors, somebody's come in, they've had a couple of seconds, if not more, to equilibrate, and then they get measured. And that seems to have worked very effectively in a lot of the installations we've done.
Another question is, how many persons at a time can the system detect, or is it analyzing on people one by one? Well, given the current scenario, the recommendation from all the health authorities is to have 2-meter distance between each person. The system is capable of reading multiple people at the same time, but we would like our clients to follow the health organization's recommendation.
Okay, so there was a question there. Is it possible to send an email with details of the person who's been captured? Obviously, we've got to be very careful with that. GDPR, certainly in and around Europe, is a big deal. So we have set up the ability to send an email with a snapshot with the temperature data. And that is all that is included in the email, to keep it as sort of generic as possible. And that email would go out to the responsible person within the health and safety department of the organization, or wherever needed it.
Okay, another question, is the black body necessary for the thermal reading? No, it's not. But it helps you calibrate the temperature, so you get more accurate readings.
Okay, guys, I think we're going to stay on for about another 2 more minutes, and then we'll call it a day. But if you do have any questions that hasn't been asked and answered in the session, please feel free to reach out to us or contact one of our regional offices. But we're going to stay online for another 2 minutes or so.
Another question is, do we have a solution to stop the person when detected with high temperature blocking access cards? We do have an integration, a lot of integration with access control systems that allows us to lock the door based on an event from the temperature monitoring solution.
Yeah, and we could trigger an IO as well, which could trigger a lock as well, if necessary.
Okay, there's a question from Guttis. Is there a limitation on how wide the entrance can be? A difficult one to answer there really is because you really want to try and get to measure one person at a time. You know, ideally you can measure more at a time, but because of the parallax issue, a couple of feet either side of the parallax point, and you're potentially going to get misreads. So you've got to view trying to measure multiple people simultaneously or over a wide area as a little bit of a risk. If you want to use this as a definitive means of determining if somebody has an elevated temperature, then you want to try and get the reading done at a specific point or in and around that area. So a wide entrance, I wouldn't say is ideal. And the other question was, can we show the live image for the thermal camera? Yes, of course we can. We can show the visual image as the full image, or we can show the thermal image as the full image to keep the reading, the person that we've been read anonymous, or you can in fact show both. So you've got complete flexibility there.
To answer George's about in Mobotex, the parallax error is meaningless as the two lenses could be on the same cam with the M73. Yes, but each of these lenses will have their own image, and one of them reads temperature and the other doesn't. So you need to do the parallax error compensation.
That seems to be about it, Gus.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much for all the attendees. It was a pleasure having you guys on board. And as I said, if you guys need to get hold of us or ask any questions, please send an email to info@cathexisvideo.com, or you can go onto our website and contact one of our regional officers from that forum. So please have a great day, and thank you once more. Cheerio.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.